My number 7 wide receiver in this draft is Minnesota wide receiver Rashod Bateman. Now, these numbers that you see in front of you on his card are erroneous numbers. Again, this is why the combine is so important. This is why the Senior Bowl for seniors is so important. Well, he's not a senior. He's a junior, so he wasn't at the Senior Bowl. So you didn't get accurate numbers on him until his pro day. He's not 6'1". He's 6 feet. He's not 210. He's 190 pounds. He told every single team that was there, I've never been a pound over 190 in my life. So I don't know where the program guide got 210 from, but that's what they listed me as. I wasn't going to refute it, but I'm 190. Well, 190 is a hell of a difference from 210. You're talking about a 20-pound difference, okay? So some of these numbers can be misleading, and that is definitely the case with Rashod Bateman, but nonetheless, he's a talented football player. And I talked about this being a draft with a bunch of smaller guys. He's a smaller guy at 6 feet, $190. He's not a big guy at all, but he fooled the hell out of me with his 40 time as we flip this card over and take a look at his strengths and weaknesses and what I project him to be at the next level. So the first thing we got to talk about is this speed. I even talked about this on my podcast. I didn't think he was that fast on tape. 4.39, I didn't see it. Now, I said, look, if you guys saw it, let me know. I didn't see 4.39 from Rashod Bateman on tape. I'm not calling him slow. I didn't see a 4.55 guy, but I didn't see 4.39 either. So I was thinking he was going to run somewhere in that 4.48, 4.51 range. It wouldn't have shocked me if he ran like a 4.46. Oh, okay, cool. I wasn't expecting sub 4.4. And I don't think he's really that fast, to be honest with you. I think that's, one of those situations that you see a guy benefit from the pro day hand times. I think he's more of a 4.4 guy, but even if hand times aren't going to be that far off. I always say about 0.03 of a second, more likely than not, somewhere in that general vicinity. So that would put him at a 4.42. He's still really fast in a straight line. Again, I didn't really see it, but if you can run that fast, it means you can run that fast. A lot of people didn't think Justin Jefferson was that fast last year. He ran the 4.42 at the combine, and look what he did in his rookie season in the NFL. Corners couldn't keep him in front of him. So if the guy can run a 4.39 or a 4.42, he must have some speed. So we're just going to go with that. Solid hands and catching traffic. Those are things that I feel like you get with the Rashod Bateman package. I think it's the hands, the catching traffic, the route running ability, and the body control that I think are his calling cards at this very moment. When you watched him at Minnesota, he was a guy that did the dirty work, essentially. Caught the underneath stuff. Every now and again, he'd get vertical. But for the most part, he did the work underneath, especially in 2019 when he had Tyler Johnson by his side and, Chris Ottman-Bell, and they were kind of loaded at the receiver position. He was he was the Juju Smith-Schuster of the group, if you will. Tyler Johnson was more the Deontay Johnson of the group, the guy that could stretch the football field vertically. And Rashod Bateman was more of your Juju Smith-Schuster. The guy that did the dirty work underneath, needed to move the change to get it to Rashod Bateman. You needed somebody to be relied on 3rd and 6. He wasn't going to Tyler Johnson. He was going to Rashod Bateman. So I think he's a guy that you can rely on in some critical situations to get the football to. He can separate. He's a very technical route runner, does a really good job of getting in and out of breaks, coming back to the football, very friendly target for the quarterback. So I think those are things you look at and you say those are big strengths of Rashod Bateman at this point. Run after catch. He's not a make you miss type of guy with the run after catch, but he is a guy that after he catches it is trying to get up the field. He's not looking for a soft place to lay down on the ground. He's looking to get up the field and maximize that catch, whether it's a strong turn after a comeback towards the quarterback up the field for an additional yardage, or or it's a tunnel screen that he's thrown and he's able to maneuver his way through traffic. He's a guy that's looking to get yardage after the catch. Toughness and fearlessness. That's kind of what I spoke to when I talked about catching it in traffic. He's a guy that's not afraid to go over the middle of the football field. He's not a guy that's worried about contact and going to take his eye off the football because he knows a linebacker or a safety's bearing down on him. He knows I'm going to get hit anyway, so I might as well catch the football. So there is this sense of toughness and fearlessness with Rashod Bateman, especially for a guy that's a $190. Now knowing that he's not 210 pounds and that frame isn't as big, knowing that he's 190 and kind of recollecting some of the film that I watched in my head, it all makes even more sense that Rashod Bateman is a guy that has toughness and is fearless because he's not 210. His frame isn't as sturdy and thick. So I feel even more confident that there's a toughness and a fearlessness to Rashod Bateman. Competes as a blocker. You know, I talked about him creating separation already. He competes as a blocker. He's not, none of these guys that I've watched on tape, I shouldn't say none of them. Most of these guys, I'd say 85-90% of the guys I've watched on tape, they're not great blockers. But the guys that are willing to block, the guys that are looking to compete as blockers, I can get with that. You know, he's willing to work for food, as a wise man once told me. You want to eat as a receiver, you better be willing to work for your food. He's willing to work for food. It's not always the best. And as a receiver, it is your responsibility to make sure you keep yourself safe. So if you're stalk blocking, you got to look behind you to see if the pile's coming your way, to see if you need to get your ankle and your knee out of there, because they'll roll up on your shit quick. So as a receiver, it can get a little dicey in there when you're trying to block. But he's willing to compete as a blocker. Formational flex, meaning formational flexibility for Rashod Bateman. He lines up everywhere. X, Z, slot. They move him around, send him in motion. So he's not a guy that you can just pinpoint, put at one particular spot and say, okay, I know where he's going to be. There's a question about whether he's better outside as a X or a Z, or if he's better in the slot, working inside. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then he had solid production in his career. The numbers don't always jump out at you, but you know, in 2019, when there was a full supporting cast with Tyler Johnson, he erupted. 60 catches, 1,219 yards. That's over 20 yards a pop, okay? And 11 scores. Those are big numbers. And that came after, on the heels of a 51-catch, 704-yard season with 6 touchdowns. Last year wasn't a big year. He was indecisive as to whether he wanted to play or not. You could tell that the vibe wasn't the same, and it was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door with Rashod Bateman. It wasn't the best season, and I questioned some things in 2020 as well, and we're going to talk about those things. But his production throughout his career at Minnesota was pretty good, and something he should be able to stand on as a foundation heading into the NFL. Weaknesses. Does he play to his timed speed? That's something I alluded to earlier. I didn't see 4.39. That's just me. You don't have to agree with that assessment. That's just my assessment. I didn't see 4.39, 40. So does he play to that speed? I didn't see it. I don't think so. But I think he's fast enough. That's all that matters. He's plenty fast enough. So can he win vertically? That's something I really didn't see on tape. There wasn't a bunch of clear wins. You know, there were some opportunities for some 50-50 balls down the field. There were some blown and busted coverages that he was able to exploit. But for the most part, there weren't a bunch of Rashod Bateman beating a defender by 2 steps down the field and separating vertically. I didn't see that kind of speed on tape. So I'm not sure if he's a vertical winner or not at the next level. We'll have to see. Is he a true number 1 wide receiver? And I bring this up because I looked at his 2020 game, and this was something that I did in 2020. There were a lot of guys that we'll talk about tonight or tomorrow or throughout this process at the receiver position in particular where you look at it and you say, okay, the show is finally yours. What'd you do with it? You know, for instance, Terrence Marshall Jr. at LSU. Because of COVID-19, the show ultimately became his. He didn't ask for it. He was expecting to have Jamar Chase as his running mate in his final season at LSU in Baton Rouge. But what happened was Justin Jefferson took off for the NFL. Jamar Chase decided to opt out due to COVID. And there he is, Terrence Marshall Jr., all by himself, having to go and carry the load. And he did. Impressively, I might add. I didn't see that from Rashod Bateman. Tyler Johnson left him and said, here go the keys to the car, man. Drive slow. But have fun. And he went from 1,219 yards with just 60 grabs, 20 yards per pop, to now 36 catches, 472 yards, and only 13 yards per catch, and only 2 scores. When the defense started loading up on him and Tyler Johnson wasn't any longer there to take away the big-time coverage. Wasn't there to take the double teams. Wasn't there to take away the game planning. Now teams, instead of them game planning to stop Tyler Johnson, had the game plan to stop Rashod Bateman, and I didn't think he handled that very well. So I think he's more of a number 2 option, and that's okay. That's okay. X or Z or slot. It's not really a weakness as much as it is a question. Where is he better served at the next level? Is he better in the slot, inside? I don't think he's an X, personally myself. I think he's either a Z or he's a slot. We'll see what happens and where he ultimately ends up. Who drafts him, what plans they have for him, and how they utilize him. My projection for him is late first to early second. I'm leaning closer towards Rashod Bateman being more of a second-round pick. I think we're going to see a run on receivers later in the first round, mid to late first round. And I think because of that, a guy like Rashod Bateman is going to end up going in the first round, probably late first, I would guess. You know, in the 20s. I don't see him going in the teens. So I think he's a mid to late first type of guy. Wouldn't be shocked if, like a T. Higgins, he just bleeds over to the second round, but he's like one of the first guys selected in the second round, like T. Higgins was a year ago. Well, we saw 2 receivers go, I think back-to-back picks last year in the second round. I think it was T. Higgins, 33rd overall, and then Michael Pittman Jr. to the Indianapolis Colts at 34, if I'm not mistaken. I wouldn't be shocked if Rashod Bateman ends up in that territory. My comp for him is Keenan Allen. He's I guess way faster than Keenan Allen running this 4.39. Keenan Allen has never run a 40 in which the second number was a 4. Never. So I think he has the advantage in the speed department, but a lot of what he does, the silky smooth route running, the snatching the ball out of the air, separating, all of those things remind me of Keenan Allen. And so that is my comp for Rashod Bateman. He is currently my number 7 wide receiver in the 2021 NFL Draft.